Yesterday we took notes and learned about the Emancipation Proclamation and completed an activity on the Emancipation Proclamation, and we asked ourselves the question whether or not Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Today, as we're sort of getting into gear for this class, I want you to think about why that question is important. Why does it matter whether or not Lincoln freed the slaves? So go ahead and take a second and write down some sort of response without my thoughts in the matter, and then I'll share my thoughts. The question of whether or not Abraham Lincoln freed the slave is a really important one. It's important when we're thinking about the merit of a political figure, whether or not he actually did what he said he did. It's an important when we think about the heritage of Black people, when we think about slaves, when we think about what slaves went through to become free. I think if you were a slave during the Civil War, you might not be grateful to a president that's really far away, passing laws that don't really directly impact you. I think a lot of people were looking for salvation, direct salvation, and I don't know if they necessarily got that with the Emancipation Proclamation. This is also a really important one in terms of international politics. We started to abolish slavery because of pressure from Europeans, and we don't really get any success with the Emancipation Proclamation. Europeans are still extremely critical of us and don't see the Emancipation Proclamation as a resolution to the slavery problem. So I hope some of those ideas are in the entry questions that you wrote down. I'll collect those when I see you in class. Today we're going to talk about Gettysburg. Gettysburg is a really bloody battle that takes place. Gettysburg is a small town in Pennsylvania. So if you didn't know, the Civil War reached as far north as Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Pretty far above the Mason-Dixon line. The Battle of Gettysburg itself was the largest and bloodiest battle of the Civil War. More than 51,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing in action. MIA means missing in action. You may have heard that term before, and if you didn't know, it means missing in action. The Battle of Gettysburg itself was a crucial Union victory. It was important for a number of reasons. It's the last time that, it's the furthest north that the South gets. General Lee never gets further north than Gettysburg, and we continue to push him south from there, and it's sort of the beginning of the end for the South. Many people consider the Battle of Gettysburg a turning point. One thing you might not know is that when battles during the Civil War would take place, you have, and especially given the number of people that would die in these battles, in the tens of thousands, you have all these bodies to deal with. And an interesting piece about Gettysburg and other battles is that American soldiers that died on the battlefield were buried by, there were people working as nurses and other things that would help deal with the wounded and the dead. But also, if you're living in the city of Gettysburg, it's in your best interest to get these bodies buried. So people in the village of Gettysburg would go out and help bury bodies after the battle. And like other battles, there were witnesses to this battle. People would go and spectate the war. So the Gettysburg Address is a really famous address. You've probably heard of it. Lincoln gives a speech at Gettysburg, and this is at a ceremony when they are ready to sort of commemorate the people that died there, and recognize the new graveyard that they've created at Gettysburg and the memorial at Gettysburg. So, interestingly, they hired someone to come and give a speech for a really long time. He actually spoke for 2 hours, and Lincoln gets up afterwards, and he was almost a second thought inviting Lincoln. But oh yeah, we should probably invite the president. And they bring Lincoln, And he gives a speech, and his speech is really short. It lasts less than 2 minutes, but it was a really important and poignant speech. It really gets to the heart of the matter and represents this turning point. So this address is called the Gettysburg Address at the dedication of the battlefield cemetery. The most important line from this is his close. He says, "A government of the people, by the people, for the people." This is a really important line, and it emphasizes his bringing everybody together, because I think he had a bigger picture in mind, which was that the war may be over soon. At least he hoped. And it was still a long time before the war ended, but he was already looking forward and looking at that unity. And so he's talking about a government of the people, by the people, for the people. He's also talking about popular government, restating some of the big ideas that he addresses in his inaugural address, and other places where he's talking about the South cannot succeed because this is I'm the president elected by the people. This is popular government. This is popular sovereignty. People elected me. But then also knowing that it's for the people. And then it's possible to interpret his expanding idea of who the people are that he and the country are serving. So this is a really important line. There's a film clip up on my website where you can hear the Gettysburg Address, and I'd like you to watch that film clip. And why do you think this address and this battle was a particularly important speech and turning point in the war? And when you're done with that, we have a little activity called the Gettysburg Address activity that I'd like you to do using the address and documents provided.